Welcome to the Sanctuary Podcast. Angel Deer is a medicine man and offers his work on sacred land through shamanic healing, energy healing, sound healing, breath work, plant medicine, and workshops and events. The Sanctuary is a community for all those who seek healing, transformation, ancient wisdom, and a place to come together to create a new way of living and relating. This is the Sanctuary Podcast, and this is Angel Deer.
Welcome, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here, and welcome, Robin. Thank you for taking the time to come and share your wisdom. We do interview regularly of people we really admire, and we feel are very aligned with this earth rekindling and reconnection, which has been so, intense and, accelerated over the past year and a half through the pandemic and all what is happening in our communities and on this planet. And I don't think we ever had that many people reaching out before a talk about a specific talk and saying they were really interested about it and excited about that talk. So, thank you for joining, and thank you to everyone that is here, live or that is going to listen to this recording. So the theme tonight was Green Witch Wisdom, Herbal Medicine, and EarthSpirit teachings for personal, social, and planetary healing. And so for those of you that maybe don't know Robin, I'm just going to read her quick bio here, but you can find more on her website, Robin Rose Bennett with 2N and 2T.com. So Robin is a storyteller and a writer and an herbalist, and she has been offering classes in WiseWoman Healing Ways, Herbal Medicine, and EarthSpirit teaching since 1986 at herb conferences, festivals, clinics, medical and nursing schools, and most joyously outside with the plants like you were just right now. And so Robin shares herbal medicine with gratitude for the loving generosity of the plants and the magic, mystery, and beauty of the web of all life. She's on the faculty at the New York Open Center and the Arbor Vitae School of Traditional Herbalism, and the author of 2 Meditation MP3 and the books Healing Magic, a Green Witch Guidebook to Conscious Living, and The Gift of Healing Herbs, Plant Medicine, and Home Remedies for a Vibrantly Healthy Life.
May it be so.
So welcome, Robin.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you so much for having me here, and hello to everyone. I see some wonderful old friends I haven't seen in a long time, and lots of people I'm just meeting-ish for the first time. So, hi.
So here we are at the frontier. Most of our work here at the Sanctuary is on shamanism, which is basically nature-based practices and working with native wisdom. So we are on ancestral Lenape territory. And the caretakers, the people that used to live on those lands, were very connected, obviously, to those lands and live very much in harmony with the plants, the trees, the rivers, the mountain, the birds, every living being that was present on this land. And here I'm talking to the Green Witch. I like the term, by the way.
Thank you.
And when I was reflecting and preparing this talk, it's one of the first things that came to me is that how much people that don't know very much about all those themes, shamanism or witch, green witch, things like that, can be a little bit afraid of it. There's a lot of misconception on what is a witch or a wizard or a medicine person. Mm-hmm. And so I would love just to start by that question about what is a green witch and who are you, Robin? what is this about witchcraft that make you wearing that title, proudly, I'm sure. And what is the essence of this?
Well, and one thing I just want to say first in response to what you were saying, Angel, is that it's not only the misconceptions that brings out fear in people of medicine work or shamanic path or witch path. It's also a kind of ingrained and trained fear of mystery. So whereas we, dive into mystery with awe and joy and excitement, there's such a desire in our cultures now to control things that's like, why would you want to do that? So now just answering your question. So the essence of, and I imagine that it does, like you have a lineage and I have a lineage, and yet there's always that, the way it comes to an individual, right, is going to be unique. But to me, the essence of Green Witch wisdom is this being connected to the reality, being connected to the reality that everything is sentient, that spirit is immanent, not IMMINENT. Editors always correct me when I put that in a piece of writing, but immanent, IMMANENT, meaning that, spirit is in the stone, right? Spirit is in the moss covering the stone. Spirit is in the mycelium under the stone, right? Under the tree. So this essential experiential knowing of the life force that connects all of us with everything and everyone. I think that's the essence of it, and finding the magic in that is magic. That is like natural magic. And then green witches can be, artists, gardeners, herbalists. I'm all of these, writer. Writing is my first love. And then I came home. It's like a coming home to being embodied, to being on the earth. So it's a little bit of hopefully a helpful answer.
Yes, it is. It is. And the more I think about it, and one of the things that comes to me very often is how much suppression there has been of that knowledge. Women were persecuted for using plants and, talking to spirits and maybe being seers or being this doula of nature, really helping birthing nature for people and reconnecting people to that. And when it comes to native people and their land, there has been the same process of suppression of that wisdom, of that culture. And I guess we see today so vividly, if we get to take a little bit of altitude, what is the cost, of that separation?
Well, it's a terrible cost. What I've said for years is that, just two things, sorry, many thoughts you're trying to go through me at the same time. One is that the suppression and the repression makes sense, quote unquote, makes sense if what you're trying to do is keep people from being free, right? So if we have our own connection and our own innate relationship with everything around us and with spirit, that leads to a kind of liberation and a kind of lack of being able to be manipulated. That's extremely unpopular to the powers that be, because they want us to buy whatever they want us to buy, right? And to live small, very small. But we are in such an evolutionary time right now. It's really juicy. Not easy, but it's really creatively juicy. And there was something else I think you asked me to respond to, and now I need you to remind me.
Well, there's definitely, I would say, the suppression on native land. That's for me, and native people and culture, and also the women and the suppression of the earth. I really see a bridge here, like a common theme of colonization's, effect that we go about.
And that's, that's part of what makes women hesitate to pick up their power, right? Because, or anyone to pick up their power, because the story of being squished for that, of being harmed for that, of being killed for that is powerful inside of us. However, there has never been a time where nature has been, and we are, of course, part of nature, but there's never been a time when nature has not been more co-creatively connecting with us and asking us to let nature, the river, the trees, help us to come out of this this pathological disconnection. See, I'm not sure if that's what I started to say that I'd been saying for years, that it's like it leads to pathology, the level of disconnection. But the thing that I often hear people say that I want to counter is that, oh, we're so removed, or people are so removed, it's hard to come back. What I found working with people for the past 30 years is it's like the thinnest filament, the thinnest membrane that keeps us from our authentic joy of reconnection. I mean, I didn't grow up I didn't grow up camping. I didn't grow up in a spiritual household, right? But when I was introduced, it was just like, wow, yeah, home. And then I see that it's not just me. And for me, my journey kind of went a little differently in the sequence than many other people's, perhaps, in that I got introduced to spiritual traditions and spiritual work long before I became an herbalist or a green witch. I didn't really become a green witch. I discovered that's what I was.
Yes.
Right. And of course, we also work with the plants, right? We work with the plants. We listen to the plants. I had to go out because I wanted to pick this little bouquet of wildflowers. I have beautiful flowers from the store here, but I wanted to bring these. So maybe during our time together, I can talk a little bit about the magic and the medicine of the particular plants I gathered from my wild garden. But yeah, pathological disconnection and getting over our fear is something that the plants can so help us with. Sitting with them, ingesting them, imbibing them. They're miraculous healers. And, when I think about the shamanic path and the green witch path, I see so many commonalities and have seen this like for years that, we work with the elements and the medicine wheel, right? The circle, as all indigenous people do, work with the sacred hoop by whatever names. And even if the South in one part of the world is connected with water, and in the way I learned is connected with fire, there's still air, fire, water, and earth below, above, and the center, right? Always. So we share that, and we share that our gifts and our strength and our sustenance comes from the land. And when I say the land, of course, I mean everything.
Yes.
The animals on our land, the creatures of our land. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to come back to that pathological disconnection, because to me, it's so obvious today in our society. It's especially more obvious in children, that we see having so many symptoms of, what we call ADD, or, we have a lot of terms to qualify those children that maybe don't fit into the system and don't find, that joy that you talk about, that liberation there. But I want to go first to the little Robin, the Robin as a little girl, and try to understand. You talk a little bit about your path, but was there a plant, something that one day shifted everything? When we interviewed Matthew Wood 3 weeks ago, and Matthew remember being with that teacher one day, and he had that connection to an oak tree. And he said that I realized he was a sentient being, he said, and there was something that day that shifted to me. It was not just a tree. It didn't have just qualities and specific things I could heal from, but there was a sentient being there. So do you have and experience something that kind of, at some point you were like, oh, this is where I need to go. This is my path. That's calling me. Something happened there.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but there really wasn't a moment. There was, when I look back at like childhood pictures, or I remember, where did I love to play best? I love to play climbing the willow tree. I love to play in the oak tree in my backyard. I found a picture of myself at 2 or 3 years old, and I'm literally, here, I'll show it to you because the picture's been lost. But I'm 3, and I run up to the video camera and I do this with a dandelion, right? 3 years old. So I'm saying, so some part of me was always there, even though
you were always there. You never left there, basically.
Right. But the thing that the plant path has done has and shifted me radically in is, as I said, I was working in spirit for a long time. I think I always had a sense that I was psychic, that everything was alive, that everything was speaking. Like, I didn't find that weird, that a tree would talk, or I never did. But I didn't have joy in being alive in a body. I wanted to be out. I wanted to be above. No, life's hard. People are cruel. This world, no. And so what the Green Witch path did was, it slowly but surely really gave me back the integration of body and soul, of wholeness, which we all always have. Right. So the thing about the pathological disconnection is, it's an illusion. You cannot be disconnected. It's not possible. But we can not feel it.
Yeah, so that's a little bit, because here we have probably a lot of people that feel the connection, or maybe are seeking into diving more deeply into that connection.
Yep.
So is there a pathway, or how do we reconnect to that mystery, especially if we don't always feel it? Say, well, the tree don't really talk to me, or I just see a beautiful dandelion, but it's pretty much as far as I can go. How do we dive in that mystery, or reopen it, I guess?
Right. Well, we open the door, right? I meant to bring over my journal, because I have written recently some haikus that really, really speak to this, and it's right across the room. But the thing is, you start with a step. The thing is, you start with any step, and step one is to desire it, to desire to wake up, to desire to open your heart, or open your mind, right? Or maybe it's somebody you meet, right, that introduces you to something you didn't even ever consider as a possibility. Like, when I work with helping people heal with plants, I can tell, and some people come and they've been working with plants, or their grandmother did, or their grandfather, and other people are like stunned when the plants help them heal, right? They just had never thought of it, but somebody told them to tell somebody to call me, blah, 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 So the thing is, you start with the intention, just as you had written on the screen before we gathered. What is your intention for the evening? And the thing that is so essential is to stop. That is the thing that is so essential, is to stop. We have to stop. We have to soften. We have to turn off the outside, noise, and listen. So there are plants that can help us with that. And of course, we know about, the entheogenic plants. But any plant, the dandelion in your lawn. I once had a shaman apprenticing with me, and when we did a plant ally meditation to choose the ally, or be chosen, as the case might be, in meditation, to see what plant is calling you to work with intensely that year, and to kind of be your ambassador into the plant world. And when she got dandelion, this woman who'd done intensive journeys for years and up in the mountaintops, she was so annoyed. She was so annoyed, and she said so, I got dandelion, like, seriously? And I'll never forget, the opening lines to her final project at the end of the year, and she looked at everyone with this humble, sincere, soft, and beautiful expression, and she said, "Dandelion kicked my butt." This is what she woke up in me. So a very specific thing that I teach people, as I was taught, is that you could be drawn to one tree or one plant, maybe just because you like how it looks or how you feel when you're near it. And you can breathe with that tree or plant. You can send your breath. Trees are a little easier for us because they kind of remind us of ourselves, only rooted, right? And if you, everybody listening now, I just want to suggest to you to really, wherever you are, even if you're 10, 20, 30 stories up in a high rise, put your roots in the earth. Put your roots in the earth over and over and over again. They're psychic roots, so they will not hold you down in any way. But what that does, that grounding does, is it allows you to rise. It allows you to send your branches up into the cosmos, right? And to be that being between, right, earth and sky, and receiving the blessings of all of it. All of that can come from sharing breath with a plant. Why? Because there's also a physiological basis, right? The tree is exhaling oxygen, right? The tree is exhaling what the tree can't use. Let's say it's an oak tree. Oak trees really saved my life over a period of a few years where I was in deep grief over the loss of my partner, right? A really sudden loss in my life that was out of the blue. And the oak trees really helped me so much to be in my experience, in my grief, in my however long it was taking, but to know that the earth was supporting me, to know that the earth was with me. And we can drink oak bark tea, right? We can lean against the oak tree. But the breath, the physiological part, is that those trees are exhaling what I'm inhaling. And when I exhale my breath, and everyone, please consciously do this, it's a giveaway to this tree, a giveaway to this plant, whatever it is, a dandelion or your prize rose bush. It could be anything. But if you do this like in a figure 8 back and forth with a tree, you begin to, the plant is always aware of your connection. So it's like we bring ourselves into a degree of awareness that the plant already has, that nature already has. And we can get better and better at that. This is how we evolved. And I like to think of the time we're in as the evolutionary chaos of now. The evolutionary chaos of now, because we need to keep our hearts lifted. Like we can visit despair, but we can't live there, right? Some things are really, really hard for many people, harder for some than others. But if we stay in that crushed place, then we don't have the energy to find our gifts and share them. And that's what we're all here for. Like I always like to say, tongue in cheek, but it's absolutely the truth. I can tell you exactly why you're here. I can tell you the secret of life. It's to become who you are. It's to become who you are. And if you commit yourself and dedicate yourself and devote yourself to becoming who you truly are, right? Which just means taking off all the overcoats of everything you've been taught of how you should be, have to be, need to be, to fit in, to have people love you, to have a security. As we take them off, then our gifts are right there in our hands. I know you've experienced this, Angel, even though we haven't met. Clearly, you've changed your whole entire life, right? So when you decided to take off the masks and become who you really are, what to do is like the exhale that follows the inhale. It's right there. I never thought that I would be a person who would know what my path was, right? Because I so felt at odds with everything and so different, right? And I bet almost everybody on this call has felt this way. I just, honestly, I never thought I'd be a person who would be fortunate enough to find my path. I thought maybe I'd find it when I was like 80. And here I am, walking my path. And it came from challenges, right, that I had to address. But we all have a path to walk, and we all have gifts to share. And the way through the time we're in, the way to make it a time of promise is to commit ourselves to developing our gifts, to finding them so that we can share them. And we can only do it together. We really can only do it together. We can't, none of us can possibly, do enough, do it all. We all go to that place, right? But we're not supposed to. That's why we have each other.
Yeah. And that's how nature works. That's one of the things that for me always bring me back there when I need wisdom. Mm-hmm. That's what my elders always told me. Say, well, everybody out there, not talking about the two-legged human beings, mm-hmm. They are all in their purpose. Yes. They don't seek it. They're not lost. They don't experience anger, confusion, separation. So all that illness that we were talking about earlier, is not present in that reflection. If we take the time, like you beautifully said, about slowing down mm-hmm. and connecting.
And then there's particular plants that help. So like, here's one that people don't really know about, so it might be fun to share. So this was why I was late, because this tree just really wanted to come. I wasn't late. I was right on time. But so this beautiful little familiar, probably, wait a minute. I always get confused. Is it in the camera well, Angel?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is a Kwanzaa cherry blossom, the kind of classic, cherry blossom that they have festivals to in Tokyo and Washington and fills the air in the streets in the spring. This blossom helps open us to joy. This blossom helps open us to joy. I take them and I rip them up lovingly. Really, I'm doing everything I can to keep myself from eating this right now because they're very delicious. But I put this in vinegar or in vinegar and honey. Oh, and it's just divine. And little by little, so I like to say too, is we're not, everybody knows we are what we eat, right? But we're not, we're what we assimilate. We're what we assimilate. So we want to also help our digestion so that we assimilate, but we also assimilate the spirit of the plant, right? As I recently heard a curandera put it beautifully, the plant has a spirit, the person has a spirit, we bring them together, the person heals. And it's so cherry, but there's one that's really abundant and common that I want to mention to everyone because it might be growing in your lawn or your local park, and that is the beautiful violet.
Mm.
And it's whatever
out now already, yes.
Right? They must be all over the sanctuary.
Yes.
And I want you to look at like the metaphor of nature is so incredible, as you said, everybody, everything cooperating with each other, nature coexistence. But I love the metaphor of how the violet leaf, shaped like a heart, of course, like our depiction of a heart, right? But also how it kind of curls in. See how it curls in here? Mm-hmm. And it's like that we can let ourselves open our hearts at our own pace. Like it's really so helpful to trust our timing is something I've learned to do. It helps us second guess things less, go back over and over things we wish we'd done or not done. Violet melts. So I'm not talking about the physical medicine now I'm talking about the spiritual medicine. Violet melts and softens the armors that we have put around our hearts, the protective armor. So I highly recommend that you learn about violet, that you eat violets in your salads, or you dry violets for tea, or you buy it. I have a whole load of wonderful resources if you want to buy things of where to buy herbs on my website. I encourage you to support conscious growers and business people and not necessarily run to Amazon for your herbs, please. You want them to be harvested with respect if they're wildcrafted, or grown with love if they're gardened. But so a little humble, shy violet. And I always find, Angel, and this is really a cool thing, is that the spiritual medicine of any plant that I've ever learned about, either from a teacher or from the plant, will always have a physical component that mirrors it, so that it keeps it, again, rooted and grounded, the medicine. It's not just like a fancy idea, or as my beloved first spiritual teacher used to say, it's not psychic woo-woo, right? It's real. It's real. So,
yes, and to discover that, we need to experience it. Obviously, because people might listen to you and say, "Well, that sounds a bit bizarre. That the shape of the leaf, is like doing something to my heart." But so many years ago, was beginning of my path with those plants. I was at a very busy job, and I was very exhausted emotionally. And there was a lot of drama where I was working at, and there was a lot of personal attack. So a lot of things were coming at me. And one day I was in my garden here. I just bought the land. It was like 10 years ago. And I got really attracted by those nettles.
good.
That were there. And for a moment, I thought the nettle was saying something to me. I was not sure. I was like, oh, maybe you're making it up. But, it was one of those very common plants like dandelion. I never really pay attention to nettle. I know they are edible. And that shows that what came in my image in my head was this small warrior, like with like a helmet and a shield and a spear. And there was all those little guy basically around those nettles. And they says, that's what we do. That's why when you touch us, it stings.
Yep.
And you say, walk with us, just drink that, make some tea, make some soup, and we are going to recharge your system. And then I realized, oh yeah, nettle is very nourishing. It has so much nutrition. But on a more spiritual level, there was this defense mechanism which really helped me regain boundaries.
You bet.
So that was my first experience there.
Nice.
So is that
nettles teaches respect.
Yeah, it was like
self-respect. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, very often people think of mind-altering plants and things like that, but I think, like you said rightly, they are all mind-altering in that way.
Yeah. All plants are consciousness-altering. They grow us. We only think we grow them. They grow us if we
totally.
we open ourselves. So that's a wonderful story about you and nettles, and it also makes me think of, and maybe some of you are thinking about this too, right? It's not like we need one medicine, right? We need the armor melted on our hearts so that we can feel our grief, so that we can feel our joy, so that we can feel, willing to connect with other people and not be frightened, right? But we also need our strength. We need our sense of our being in ourselves, right? And you saw it as the warrior. And I'm in this moment in a place of wanting to kind of find new words that take us out of military metaphors and take us out of. So I've been thinking about using, and it's nothing wrong with it, but we need some shifts. So I've been thinking about it when people say, the way of the peaceful warrior, or the guardian, the guardians, right? So so you took in those guardian nettles, and they taught you how to guard your autonomy, really, right? Your sovereignty. And really, I think these paths that we're on is ultimately, that's a big piece of it, right? It's regaining a sense of that you're sovereign. And when you're really in yourself, then it allows you to have the deepest connections, right? Yes. Right, because you're not trying to. I also love how Brene Brown puts this. She said, don't try to fit in. Find where you belong.
I'm sure it resonates with many people here tonight.
Yeah, that was such a great one for me to hear. Because, like most people, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be exactly who I was and be accepted, which didn't work. Didn't work.
Yeah, usually it requires some big shift.
Some degrees of compromise. Yep.
One of the things, we sometimes have people coming on the land, and I think we have over 400 or 500 different type of medicinal and herbal plants here. So a big diversity. And many people, because they live in New York City or they just don't have that, can feel a little bit overwhelmed when it comes to plants, because there's so many, they look so different. They might be afraid of toxicity and all that. So you gave a few pointers, but there's a few questions of people around that about how do we go about it? How do we find that maybe that plant to work with? And what are some of the steps we can take to connect and start working with them in general that are safe, that are easy, like the breathing with the tree that you explained, things like that we can do, that kind of first baby steps into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Learn one plant. Learn one plant at a time. That's the best way, is just start with exactly one, right? And where, again, our culture has, brainwashed us more and more and more and more. But one is it's like falling in love with one person, right? It brings a degree of depth and richness that you can't have if you're in a room with, 30 people, right? It might be fun, but it's not the same. So I say, start with one plant, learn to identify one plant, or, really, you don't even have to. You could maybe, you take a little walk through the park. I mean, I by the way, I'll just diverge for a second. I spent my first 10 years as a herbalist in Manhattan. In Manhattan, yeah. One day, New York Magazine did a story, and they did the Green Witch of New York. I was like, it's time to go. It's time to move. But it was exciting. So city, country, suburb, wherever you are. I mean, the only caution I would say is, to make sure that if you're ingesting plants, that that they're not sprayed with pesticide. And I also always like to add, and if you know that it is in your neighborhood or your park, start speaking up about it and say, we don't want this. We don't want things poisoned. It's not necessary. But going back to the original kind of question, so what I was saying was sometimes you don't even need to know what plant it is, what tree it is. Maybe you are just, every time you take that walk, that one just kind of pulls you over towards it a little bit. You might want to just sit with a little sketch pad, right? Or you might want to just do some automatic writing, right? My favorite one is to do this plant says, this plant says, this plant says, and you just don't, it's a Natalie Goldberg technique, right? You don't take your pen up from the paper until something else starts coming out. And if you start to panic, you just go back to this plant says, this plant says. You'd be amazed. There might be only one line in there, but that one, that isn't I don't know, that feels profound to you, but it'll be really profound for you. But you could learn to identify one. You could learn dandelion, or you could learn one of my all-time favorites, plantain. Right, plantain. Right, and I mean, I could describe to you how to identify it and say it grows in a rosette and it has parallel veins. But I don't think that you're gonna, if you don't know it, you're not gonna feel comfortable from my description online. But find a local forager, or look in my books, look in guidebooks, but start with one. I mean, that's how I started. With one plant. And I still to this day have my apprentices, again, do that plant ally meditative work. We use some plants that help us open up a little extra, and they work with that plant for the year. And I still do this practice, right? I do this practice. Last year I worked with strawberry. Strawberry is such a little sweetheart of a plant in the rose family. It's one of the rose family plants that doesn't have thorns, right? So it doesn't have those kind of boundaries you were talking about with nettles, stinging nettles.
Way sweeter.
What?
Very sweet.
Way sweet, right? Nettles we classify as salty. So it builds you up. Right. And I'm not sure I ever finished the thought of that. We need all of these medicines, in a certain way, right? We need the heart, the armor melting. We need the opening to joy from the cherry. We need the rooting and grounding of a dandelion root, right? We need the power, the sense of personal power of the nettles. We need all of these things. And then what starts to happen is you open to one plant, or even to the idea of opening to a plant, and one step leads to the next. One step leads to the next. When I was talking about not feeling I'd ever find my path until I was really old and almost ready to leave, I just started to come from the place of, if I put one foot in front of the other and I do something I care about, whether it's for money or not, that's not the point, but do something or investigate or explore, it's going to lead me somewhere good. And that's what happens. It does. It really does. And even or take your shoes off and be barefoot on the earth, that feeds you physically, spiritually. The other thing, Angel, in terms of slowing down, is I just don't know how anybody can stay sane in 2021 if they don't have some kind of meditative practice. I just don't think it's possible. I know it's not possible for me. I would be less joyful if I didn't have a meditative practice. So just time to close the eyes, go inside every day, 20 minutes. It takes 20 minutes for sort of your wavelengths to shift. It's really, really helpful. Really helpful. A plant that's helpful with that is Artemisia vulgaris, commonly called mugwort.
Mugwort, yes. Someone was asking about mugwort or talking about
here's a little mugwort. Here's the back. That silver suggests that this is a plant connected with the moon, right? Connected with lunar wisdom, with psychic, intuitive, what we call the deep feminine wisdom. Not talking gender, but that deep feminine wisdom that's been so missing from the earth. Right, that wisdom that says, let's not sit in rows, let's sit in a circle. Right, and so that we all realize that our voice. I like to think that we're in a circle now, and each of us is like one spoke on the wheel. And though I'm talking and you're talking, everybody's perspective who's sitting here in the circle is valuable. It's more than valuable; it's essential. We really, truly need all of us. And then it ripples, and then it ripples.
You're listening to the Sanctuary Podcast with Angel Deer. While you're listening, browse the website at www.thesanctuaryheal.com.
Yeah, and so I love how you talked about finding that one plant and really sitting with it. I remember years ago when I took, a herbalism class for a few years, and I went already bought a lot of books. I got really overwhelmed by the names and the classifications and all that. And one day I was listening to a native teacher that told me that was a very white mind things to do to classify all those plants. And,
absolutely.
It's like, they say you don't classify your brother and your sister, it's just your family. And so it kind of invited me to basically go back to my land and to look at what was growing there. Because He said the plants that you need, they grow next to you. That you don't have to go to exotic destination or other very rare plants. I was looking for a plant that nobody knew or something very special. And here I am, I'm meeting nettle. And then after nettle, it was yarrow. And after yarrow, it was tulsi. And what happened is that I happened to work for a few months with one plant. And somehow when it was time to go, to let go of that plant, either I felt I received these other plants in dream, or it was just appearing on my path. And I got to relearn to trust my intuition, to not seek out, those like all those books and things like that, to really return to my intuition. And I feel even in some of the questions we have to do, I think there's always that thing, could you tell me, what plant I need to use for that? So do you have that experience that we somehow, and it's probably part of this pathology, that we have completely hand over our power, and that includes trusting that we somehow know about those plants. We somehow at least can remember. There's a process that might be scary, but that is possible to start with what we call those little weed, plants that literally grow everywhere and that maybe we don't pay attention or we try to remove all the time from our lawn.
We try to remove them, we poison them, we stomp all over them. Yes. I mean, and there's even, so one way to describe what you're saying is body wisdom. It's body wisdom, so that I've learned from, and I'm always learning from children and animals, that there's this response to the plant when you're drinking the tea or, let's say drinking a tea, it just feels right. And oftentimes, even with somebody with a chronic, long-term condition, they might have a really dramatic reaction in their healing process. And I've learned to tell them not to count on that lasting, right? That healing moves in a spiral. It doesn't move in a straight line, very, very rarely, especially if it's something that's been long-term. But it's like the plant wants you to know it's the right one for you, right, for that moment. And the plants aren't possessive. So, of course, nettle introduced you to yarrow, and yarrow introduced you to tulsi. They're very open that way. They don't seem to have that kind of ego. No, it's just me. But on the other hand, you will probably, I would venture to say, you will always have a deep connection with nettle. You'll always have a deep connection with nettle. Like I'll always have a deep connection with elder because, all right, so maybe this goes back to your very first question. I did, before I was going to go an apprentice, I did have a dream about a tree, and I knew I was supposed to sleep under the tree, and I had no idea what the tree was. I was living on 14th Street and 6th Avenue in Manhattan. There weren't even any trees. It's like a really big avenue, totally commercial, and it's got apartments.
I know that corner. Yes, it's not very green.
Yeah. So no, not at all. And I had the dream, and I learned eventually that was the elder tree. That was the elder tree, sambucas. Right, a revered medicine everywhere. It grows, and so yes, there was that moment. Then when I actually met the elder, I'm like, oh, that was the tree in my dream. Oh, and then I learned, there's actually a legend that you sleep under the tree on summer solstice eve, and you'll see the fairies going by, and that's kind of cool that this is coming up because we're right at the cusp of Beltane, and the fairies come back. The Fae people come back from the other world for half the year. Now, right about now. So I got sidetracked by my own story. Wait, give me a second and I'll come back. Maybe someone in the room can help me.
Yeah, we were just talking about, that finding that plant that is right for us.
Body
trusting the intuition, trusting, what's calling.
So yes, thank you. This is really important. So you're talking about trusting intuition, and that what helps us trust our intuition is coming right again. Here we are. You have to be embodied. You have to be in your body to feel, right? And so what I've learned from children and animals is that they will enjoy even the most bitter tasting plant when it's what they need. And so I do this with adults, and I see it with myself. I see it with everybody, that when we need it, like, I'm not saying it's like chocolate truffles, but it will taste to us like good, like, I need this right now. I need this right now. Or this appeals to me. I've seen it over and over and over and over again. So there's actually a name for learning through your own senses. It's called organoleptic learning, right? But body wisdom sounds less scary. But your body, so when something tastes right to you, you can trust that. And yes, our senses have been diluted with all of our processed food and our white sugar and, all of that. But, you just got to trust it's a process of step by step by step. So I remember one gal who was studying with me had a terrible accident, lost all of her teeth in a bicycle accident. And I'm not going to tell you the whole story, right? But yarrow was one of the herbs that I strongly suggested to her as she was going through all of this dental work and implants. And she was in pain and swollen. Anyway, drank the yarrow, loved the yarrow. When she got better, she's like, how did I ever drink that? How did I ever drink it? She didn't like it, but she liked it when she needed it. And I see this over and over again, and animals know what to drink. Like, that's how I started working with animals. I'm going to have the joy of doing a class with a bunch of horsewomen in July, I helped her with her horse, and now she's got like a whole gig going of helping people with herbs with their horses. And what I first learned with animals was like a friend came up and said, my cat has a heart condition. They want to put her on this herb. I was a young herbalist. I didn't know the specifics. What do you do for tachycardia versus this versus that? So I said, all right, let's put down every heart herb I know and see if the cat will drink any of them. And the cat like walked up to one bowl, sniffed, walked to another bowl, sniffed, walked to another bowl, sniffed, walked to this bowl and sniffed and said, that's the one, and lapped the whole thing up. So I started realizing, yeah, there's a wisdom through our senses that can help empower our intuition. And right, again, the intuition and the body senses brings together, again, the spirit and the being embodied. Because a lot of us on the spiritual path, you know, are not as good at being in our bodies. And that's where we're supposed to be. That's where enlightenment can bring joy, right? Is really being all the way here where we came to be.
So do you use things like muscle testing or things like that? You just test 2 or 3 different plants, or you just go with the taste and the feeling? Say, well, I'm going to try those 3 plants, or maybe you're
well, I don't do that anymore, but yeah, no, I go by many things, but no, I don't go by muscle testing for me, because my guidance has been that I need to always be not using an outside tool. And I know that's not exactly an outside tool, but just passing over that for the moment. I mean, if I'm helping somebody, I'm going to look to help them use the least amount of plants to address the most things. Like, you can't necessarily address everything at once, right? But if there's one plant that can help them both with nervousness and a rapid heartbeat and lack of sleep, then we might say, yeah, drink some linden. Drink some linden blossom. What's in my cup is, so it's taste, it's smell, it's energy, right? Like, so if you're sitting with me, I might have you drink something and just see, and I train my students to do this, just like what happens in his energy field when he drank that cup of nettles. And all of us have this ability to see, oh, look, he just sat up straighter. You know, he didn't even know he sat up straighter, because we do, right? We have these responses. There's a lot of wise folks in this circle who, you know these things, who've seen these things in their practices as well. And, you know, we want, like, the plants that help us vision, that are like the kind of break and enter plants, are really powerful, you know, the ayahuasca or what have you, right? They're not easy on the body, ultimately. They're hard on the liver. They're hard on the kidneys. They're not really meant to be used all the time, right? We want to open, if that, maybe that is exactly what's needed right now, to open more doors more quickly for more people, right? Because we do need to wake up, and like yesterday, right? All right, tomorrow, today, now. All right. So, but the thing is, it's like the integration and the embodiment of what happens for us when we, you know, take something that, you know, kind of blows the door open, as opposed to something that we turn the knob, open the door, walk through, and then say, wow, I've been rubbing my body, you know, with dandelion flower oil, and not only do I have less cramps, my limbs is flowing, I don't have, my ankles are less swollen, but I feel brighter. Right, because dandelion is like, well, what that plant tells me is I'm a light in the darkness. And I was telling my apprentices last night, I have never tasted dandelions that were as sweet as this year. This year, they are outrageously sweet. They're usually
There's
like
so many. So, I mean, I don't know for me, but right next to my house, there's this massive patch that I'm sure was not here last year. There's just so many that really called me and say, oh, there's something with dandelion this year. It's interesting.
Are there questions in the chat that we might want to?
Yeah, there's a few that I was covering, but, you know, there was a few questions about native plant vs non-native, and foraging vs cultivating. So if you can just talk a little bit upon that. Is it better to go forage wild plant? Is it better to cultivate them? And also, what about native, non-native? What's your? I mean, I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to ask you about it. How do you go about that? Or invasive, non-invasive? Now we have all those classification. This is an invasive. This is not good. I'm sure you have a different opinion on that, but
you bet I do. You bet I do.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Right, and it's like the thing you say with the native view of plant families. It's like, well, what's growing next to dandelion? That's dandelion's family, not what's in the Asteraceae genus, right? But what's growing with dandelion? Oh, dandelion likes to grow with plantain and burdock. Oh, maybe those would work well together in a body. Maybe they would. So, so let's talk about cultivating or foraging. One of the most important teachings that I have been working on for the last 30 years, and that Strawberry just kept telling me over and over again last year, is there's no such thing as this or that. There is no such thing as this or that. It is always this and that, this and that, this and that. So that's my answer about that. And then if we're talking about certain plants, I will only use them cultivated. Whereas when I started, I would only use them wildcrafted. But when I started, herbalism wasn't $1 billion business, right? And so now, because it's we're way beyond the backyard herbalism thing. I mean, that's herbalism really, ideally, is besides just a family or personal, as a business, it should be a small scale business. It really, really lends itself to that, to be good for the earth. And what's good for the earth is good for us. And what's good for us is good for our earth. So certain plants such as slippery elm bark, right? That's a great digestive. I wouldn't use that wild because we've lost so many elms to Dutch elm disease. We don't want to take elm from the wild. I don't want to take ginseng from the wild. I don't want to take echinacea from the wild. So this was a plant that filled the plains, right, like the buffalo, right? But it's been over harvested to, just to within an inch of its life. So I only buy cultivated or grow echinacea. Some people call it echinacea. Same plant. Coneflower. Beautiful. It's often in gardens as a, quote, ornamental, right? Which is, again, another very human-centric way to see a plant. Like I did a video just really recently on my YouTube channel on the cherry, not this cherry tree, but on my flowing cherry tree. And I was like, don't tell the bees who are buzzing all over these flowers that this is just ornamental, right? This is not ornamental to them. This is sustenance. So cultivating, I wish that I had learned to garden before I learned to wildcraft. But I did live on the beautiful island of Mannahatta, land of wild strawberries. I just thought of that. Yep. So here it is, all these years later, and strawberry said me. So I didn't garden yet. I didn't know about having to take care of plants, how to tend plants. And then gradually when I moved out of the city, and of course, many people in the city have beautiful community gardens and this and that, but I wasn't there yet. I was just learning to, and when you said about it being overwhelming, I remember coming home from my apprenticeship, my first real deep studies of plants, and going, oh my God, everything just looks green. I didn't learn anything. I don't know anything. So it's very common. And even in my apprenticeship, the second year or the third year gals are looking at the first year gals going yeah, or the guys, yeah, we know. Yeah. You'll be surprised when you see how much you actually have learned. So that's common. And that's why it's so good to work, with one. It doesn't mean you can only drink that plant, but it means you put your studies into one and it really opens the whole world. It's like when you've had a deep relationship with someone, and then maybe even if that relationship ends for whatever reason, you've learned a lot that goes into your other relationships, So cultivating is brilliant because you really learn to care for the plants, which I love. I do wildcraft very abundant, very common weeds. So I wildcraft plantain. Wildcraft means gathering from the wild. I wildcraft violet. I wildcraft plantain, dandelion, yellow dock, burdock, plants whose names I don't know, but I know they're good to eat. Violet flowers, right? And these violet flowers are not even the reproductive flowers. They're just sheer showing off. They're just sheer showing off. They're just exuberant and beautiful. And I picked these to put in vinegar to create a beautiful purple vinegar salad dressing. But they didn't make it into the vinegar yet because I wanted to show everybody.
So invasive, alien,
invasive. Okay.
alien invasive species. Do you have a take on that? I mean, I have some idea. I'm sure you're.
Here's my suggestion. Let's all call them pervasive plants as opposed to invasive plants, because invasive implies an intention. Again, there's the military kind of mindset, an intention to take over, an intention to do, to have power over. They're pervasive, yes, and sometimes they absolutely need to be, tamed and, taken down so other things can grow. And these pervasive plants are so often showing up where they bring specific healing to water, specific healing to land. In my area where Lyme's disease and other tick co-infections are epidemic, we have huge overgrowths of Japanese knotweed and Japanese barberry, both of which are turning out to be really important herbs to help people through Lyme's. Yes. All right, so the plants will tend to be healing. Now, I have a wild rose that was threatening to take down my pine tree. For years, I let them coexist. I said they were married, and then finally I said, all right, you know what? This is no longer an equal relationship. You're taking over. So you're not letting pine breathe. Pine needs a little space. So I'm not saying we don't. People have always, native peoples, indigenous, everybody has always managed, quote unquote, managed plants, worked with the plants, used them to our advantage. I mean, one of my teachers I'm so grateful for, I didn't have many experiences with her, but the ones I had were absolutely pivotal, was Kiwe Denokwe, an Anishinaabe herbalist from Michigan, or the land we call Michigan. And she said, truthfully, that all the creatures of the earth, the plants have remained truest to their original instructions from Creator, which is to give of themselves generously for the health of all the other beings, right? Of all the other beings. And so the plants, I believe the animals do as well. They want us to take them into ourselves. They want us to, we need the qualities, of deer, of nettle, of violet, of, and so on and so forth. We need to have more of ourselves, and they are part of ourselves in order to be effective at, really, to not put too fine a spin on it, of taking back the earth. Because that's what this time is really about. It's about us taking back the earth for the benefit of all beings, rather than it being, taken away from most people for the benefit, or the supposed benefit, of a few people, right? This is the time we're in. It's a really critical moment. It's a critical moment. So did I answer all those foraging?
You did, yes. Yeah, okay. You did answer. And, that leads me into this other question, which are kind of outlined by some people here, which is obviously we're in this time of reclaiming power, self-power. Mm-hmm. That's what we call freedom, really. Mm-hmm. So is there specific plans that are really about embodiment, returning to the body, finding our path, and those plans that really support that remembering of self, getting into our bodies, and then finding that purpose, finding that guidance?
Well, we've all been wounded in various ways. And so, the finessing of answering that question would be, well, where am I most wounded? Where do I really need the most help? But since we can't go through each and every participant in the circle, I love common plantain because plantain, and this is not the banana plantain. This is Yantain in Espanol, or plantago in the botanical Latin, or plantain, lance leaf or broadleaf or seaside. There's many plantains. This little rosette that grows on the earth. Everywhere we walk, there's plantain. What I've seen, so plantain builds the body very well. It helps heal the integrity of the gut wall. It helps heal the mucosa in the mouth. It's super high in iron. It's really a specific I turn to when infants have what they diagnose as failure to thrive. So think about this failure to thrive. So if in your life you're feeling like, oh, I want to know what my path is. I want to know what my gifts are. Or maybe I have a hint, but I haven't had the courage to, take those next steps into walking my path. So I'm not thriving inside. Maybe even outside you're thriving great, but inside not so much. Plantain is a shockingly powerful ally. And the other thing about plantain as a spiritual medicine, and I discovered this over many years, I did not know this for the longest time, but this is a profound truth. Plantain is a great medicine when someone has become so jaded and cynical that it's like, really, why bother? It's too late. Right, it's too late. We've messed up so badly. I'm cleaning up my language in my mind as I'm speaking. I don't know how important that is to you, but we're right. So I mean, a lot of us feel that way sometimes, right? But if you sit in that place, it's devastating, right? And it's it's not true. Most importantly, it's not true. So I love plantain could be a great place to start reclaiming embodiment because it restores lost innocence. And then you can bring your adult awareness, but still have that childlike innocence, that trust that anything is possible, right? That anything is possible.
It's really fascinating to see that. So I have a lot of plantain on my land because, it's everywhere. But there's one place where I have a lot of plantain every year. It's on my driveway, which is those rocks, those very fine rocks. And every year the plantain just come back out of the land, almost run on my driveway and colonized it. And I always look at it as this plant that is so resilient, so capable of just... That's what I heard from it. Say, well, I'm coming to bare lands. I'm coming to places that have been devastated and I can rebuild from there. So it's interesting because I see bridges with what you were talking about, that courageous little plants. That
physical medicine, spiritual medicine. It's specific for anemia. And here we are in the time of COVID. This is a plant that helps the lungs. It helps us to breathe. And it's probably most famous simply as the Band-Aid plant that you chew up and put on if you get a mosquito bite or a wasp sting or something, and it will soothe the itch. It will heal the pain. It will bring down inflammation. It will stop bleeding, and it will draw out a splinter or a piece of glass or this or that. And it's just a weed, right? Yes, Lynn, it's been raining here, and plantain is everywhere, and yeah.
It's definitely raging. Yeah, it's like the dandelion this year, I feel.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I mean, okay, you go ahead.
No, I was just looking at the question around that, and people, Liz was asking, do you have a few other rituals that can evoke a spiritual relationship with plants to share, like the breathing with a tree? So, is there other ways like to kind of get that relationship ready? That's what it is with that plant. Like as a living being there, and what are the ways there?
I mean, one way would be to have that plant like on your land or in your house. If it's, maybe you want to develop a relationship with hawthorn and you buy a hawthorn tree if you don't have one. Or what's really beautiful is you could take a sprig of the plant, dried or fresh, and put it next to your bed and ask the plant to come into your dreams. And because we can be sometimes more receptive and open, when we're asleep, and we might get messages that way. So that could be nice, or put a piece of that plant on your altar, right? Or on an altar that you have. Just sitting with a plant or climbing into a tree is always good. So, like, I'm not against by any means, reading and studying outwardly, but that won't deepen your relationship with the plant. That just will give you information.
Mm-hmm.
So any way that you can be with the plant or a part of the plant, even sometimes I'll have someone, if it's the best they can do, maybe for whatever reason, we don't need to go there, all right, download a picture from the internet, at least look at a picture of the plant. They're not limited in time and space. You can put out the intention that you want to know that plant better and you want that plant to know you better. The plant will get that. I mean, only have about 1 million examples of that. Here's a great one. I had an apprentice who for years didn't tell me, this is so funny, that she was just really afraid of plants. She was really afraid of plants, and she was doing my apprenticeship program, and she didn't go out, and she didn't do her homework, she didn't do her practices, and she was elling with the pine tree. And this is literally true. A pine tree in her courtyard in her city apartment grew in to her bedroom window. It literally grew one branch. Hello, you are going to meet me. And she has since really turned her life around, really healed some serious mental conditions that she had, and physical conditions. And really, the plants help us grow up too. They help us mature ourselves. Like, we're in a very immature time of our humanness, and the plants are way older than us. So that's something else too. Back to this question about cultivating, here's something beautiful. Bring a gift to a plant or tree that you want to get to know better. If it's really dry, your gift might be water, or it might be a crystal you love that you're giving away, or it might be you make a beautiful little herb blend of lavender and roses or sage or whatever you love, and you put it down at the base of the plant. So you come to that plant, you let that plant see you, your heart, and then you look, to see. So again, it takes time, just like when you meet somebody, you don't know them intimately right away, right? Like, even if you drink that cup of tea, like even if you sleep with that person on your first date, you still don't know them intimately yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can like put the giveaway down. You can make a cup of tea and drink it, and like make that a ritual, right, of connection. You can take a bath in an herbal tea. That's a wonderful way to also, so you immerse yourself in a medicine made from that plant. It's another way to cultivate the connection. If you're working with the plant itself, then that's it. You go to that plant in different weathers, right? Be with that plant at night, or in the rain, or the sun, or different seasons. A guy who's in his third year of the 3-year apprenticeship program just wrote to me like earlier this afternoon. He said, "Who is this? I'm so drawn to this tree." He just moved to a new home. And I said, "Are you home?" He said, "Yeah." He moved to my town. And I said, "Are you home?" "I'm right nearby. I'll come look." So I pull up at his house, and he takes me to this tree that he's been so excited about. And it's this total full blooming apple tree. So beautiful. It was an apple tree. He didn't know, but it's filled with pink blossoms. He's like, "Is it going to have apples in the autumn?" I was like, "Probably," and his, daughter was so excited to learn they had an apple tree. So you start with following your heart, and then you see where then all these different ways. I hope these practices, maybe these suggestions are helpful.
Yes, it's beautiful. And so we have 5-10 more minutes, but I want to shift gear and talk a little bit about one of the things that's dear to my heart that I feel when I reconnect to the land and when I go into those practices is that it's much more than just my own health and, what we just talked about, but there's also a political act, a social implication.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've been teaching thousands of people and you've been doing that for a very long time. And I want to ask you a little bit about your perspective on doing what we talked about, but as a broader kind of enlarging it now to the most impact on this earth and our relations, how we interact, and kind of a different way of living and relating. And now this Green Witch, this practices really reverberate into the collective, into much deeper than even just our little tea on our counter. There's I like to say a political act, so kind of voicing this is the system I believe in. So I don't know, I'm sure you have a lot of things to say about that. I'd love to hear a little bit about your opinion on that, your feeling about that.
Self-care is one of the most radical acts we can do. And to truly take care of ourselves because we care about ourselves. Because if I can't care about me, anything I do outside is limited. I can't take better care of my river. I can't take better care of my tree than I can of myself. So that's the first thing. And self-care doesn't mean that you do it all yourself. A very huge piece of self-care that is so important to learn to practice is how to ask for help, and then how and when to ask for help and to open to receive it, right? So my thinking is that if I feel terrible, if I feel run down, if I feel weak, if I feel sick, if I feel tired, where do I have the energy to stand up for the people, right, and the land? So there again, it's like little strawberry taught me, it's not this or that, it has to be all of it. It's like, this to me is the new paradigm. The old paradigm was the healer works themselves to the bone until they die, and they get weaker and sicker, and everybody goes, oh, that's so too bad, wasn't she wonderful, wasn't he wonderful, they were always there for everybody, they never took care of themselves, they're so selfless. No more. No, that's not a good paradigm for our time. For our time, we need to be sustainable for the long run. I mean, I do a lot of political workings locally here, standing up to get thus and so projects stopped or get this to happen or, whatever. I mean, nobody wants to spend their time going to, council meetings or things like that. I mean, I don't think anybody does. I'd much rather be, taking a walk in the woods, right? But when we have been cared for by the land, right, or by our connection with the earth, then that's our give back, right? It's almost like the exhale that follows the inhale, and everybody's got different paths. I don't think there's one right way. I don't think it's absolutely true that everybody has to be anything, right? People have different ways of contributing to the whole, but by connecting yourself and learning to be in yourself again, then you have the energy to tend to the collective. And my thinking is, choose which elements of tending to the collective are for you, right? Because none of us can do everything, and you can burn out and lose it. And in the end, that doesn't help. That doesn't help. But when you, like, let's say if I was asked to speak last week at a rally in our town where we're stopping a gas compression station, right? And everything about it is awful, right? Supporting frack gas, destroying, it's right next to a waterway that's giving water to 3 million people. Like, it's absolutely certifiably insane, but they say they're going ahead with it. And I keep saying, no, you're not. You're not. So, there we are in this. So anyway, I was, there were other speakers. There was a Lenny Lenape man who also invoked, the directions. It was beautiful. There were people on the front lines of the, the political, and people who had all the facts and figures about why it was bad. And then there was me bringing the roots, bringing the roots of the land and the power of the land to and the what was possible. See, I think this maybe is the key for me, is we have to be able to imagine the healing that's possible, the reclaiming that's, in my opinion, inevitable. As we heal ourselves, healing spreads. It spreads in our families. It spreads in our communities. And even to the extent of when you're having to have difficult confrontations. I had a really difficult confrontation in my neighborhood just this weekend. It was so hard because these are my neighbors, and they're going to be mad at me for the confrontation because I was protecting the forest. I wouldn't say we left best friends, but they really did hear me, that when I said, because I brought the mountain, to my voice, I care about your kids and I care about the land. I care about your kids and I care about the land. I said it over and over and over, and I really do hope. I know the kids heard it, which is really important because they're the next generation. But that's where a lot of young people are now too, is they can only see everything that's wrong. And we need to be envisioning what we're creating, not what we're tearing down, because it's falling apart of itself, right? I mean, we're part of it deconstructing, of course, but it's like the structures that we've lived in, they are self-destructing at this point.
Yes.
So really, our job is not to get caught up in the destructive part, but to be really full and busy with the envisioning and actualizing of what are we creating. And I feel that the working with the plants, taking them into ourselves as medicine, as food, and as teachers, helps us immeasurably in helping our health, our lives, our health on every level, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and bring it out into our neighborhoods, our communities, our societies. And remember that we're working with the natural flow of things. Things align with love. They align with love because it is more in our true nature. And the plants are very loving, and they help us to be ever more loving so that we can critique and refuse to participate and stand up, but we can also keep love in our hearts and vision of the healing of everyone.
Thank you. I want to keep that as the word at the end, but I want also to open it to you just for your closing. If you have anything you want to share with people, but I wanted to take the time, because you will be speaking last, to thank you so deeply, Robin. I feel your heart. I feel your passion and your fierce warrior, not a warrior, how do you say? Guardian. Fierce guardian that is there. Look, you already converted me. The fierce guardian that is there. Thank you. Yeah, I feel that true passion that is present, and the power that is definitely there. And I'm sure everybody tonight felt that. So thank you for everybody for joining. And I'm going to leave you for any closing words you want to share, and sending everyone much blessing for this evening.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your work and what you do and facilitate. So beautiful, for following your path, your heart. And to all of you for being here. And I do want to mention that I was very drawn to tomorrow night. Well, if you're listening via recording, maybe not, but for those of you still here, Friday, April 30th, to offer a Beltane ritual, a celebration of pleasure and magic, and link this pleasure to some spiritual activism for justice. And the spiritual activism part is focused on continuing some work I did with one class on doing some Greenwich ritual work to help reunite the families that have been separated at the border. So it's an perhaps unlikely combination, pleasure and justice, but I wanted to try. So we're going to do that tomorrow night. And probably the best way to keep track of things that I have going on is through my newsletter that you could sign up for on my website, robinrosebennett.com. And I've got all the other stuff, the YouTube videos and Instagram and all that good stuff. And just to say, I'm working on some new books. I'm excited to share them with the world. They're not out yet, but there's a novel coming out. There's a nonfiction book coming out, and a book for young people. So very exciting. And I think we've covered what needs to be said. You know what? We could just do one thing, is just to take a breath together, just breathing in, breathing out. And I'd like you to imagine that in the center of our circles, if we were all in a circle together, maybe we're surrounded behind us by beautiful trees, and under and all around are all the beautiful spring plants. And just imagine that center of the circle. And what I like to remind us is that the center of the circle is where the uniqueness that each one of us is meets the oneness that we create together. So I invite you to breathe the oneness in the center of our circle, to feed and grow and strengthen the unique being, the one and only you that you are. Breathe it in. And then when we exhale, let's give away, gift to the center with an intention to grow unity, oneness, community, a community of true connection and caring. And as we say in my tradition, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Blessed be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And Angel, thank you.
You've been listening to the Sanctuary Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, we're a source of talks about spirituality, personal transformation, energy healing, shamanism, and earth-based practices. For more, visit thesanctuaryheal.com. On the website, you can find out about our events, our retreats, healing offering, our spiritual blog, and you can also register for the newsletter. Again, visit thesanctuaryheal.com. Till next time, this is the Sanctuary Podcast, and Angel Deer signing off.